Hi friends, Right Careers welcomes you to the continuation of last week's video that we saw. So before we get on to this, the customary thing. So thank you so much for all the support and subscription that you have done so far to my channel. And in case you haven't, do click on the subscription button by clicking www.youtube.com/rightcareers and also click the bell button so that you get all instant notifications, accordingly. So moving on, where we left last week. Last week we saw the topic how to find the balanced school for your child, and the link to the topic is given beneath this video. You can very well watch that link of last week. So just to recap, last week we saw what are the most important factors to identify the balanced school for your child. The first factor that we saw was the philosophy of the school. The philosophy of the school should be spot on, and if the philosophy suits you, customizes to your requirement and your child's requirement, you can go ahead. That's the first point that we saw. And we also saw in depth about the board, the correct board, or rather the balanced board for the right board for your child, for your son or daughter. It could be Indian boards or it could be international boards. So how to choose those boards is what something that we saw last week. Now moving on, we will see few more factors that determines to choose the balanced school for your child. The next factor that I thought needs definitely to be looked at is the infrastructure part. Now the school infrastructure. Now a balanced school will have the right infrastructure for children. Now I am specifying very particular on this word called right infrastructure. Now what is right infrastructure? Many schools might say we have air conditioned classrooms, we have individual furniture that suits a child. So for not the benches, individual furnitures. And then they might say the ratio or the student faculty ratio, student teacher ratio is 1:16. So these are some of the infrastructural things that the school usually promotes. But to be very honest with you, is air conditioner a necessary aspect of a school? That's up to you. I'm not saying it is right or wrong. I might have my own opinion, but it's up to you as a parent to see whether air conditioners are the differentiating factors for a balanced school. That's something that you have to see. The second factor that the school might also say is in terms of individual furniture. Now again, I have sat across benches and I had a great time at schools, and I'm sure some of the parents who are watching this video must also agree with me. Do we need an individual furniture? It's fine if the school has. I'm not saying don't reject a school because they offer air conditioner or they offer individual furnitures. But that is definitely not going to be the differentiating factor for the balanced school. Then what it is? Now, most importantly, we need to see certain aspects. Definitely, teacher-student ratio is very important. Anything beyond 28, you can definitely think, because when I studied, my class strength was 60, and we know what kind of attention the teachers used to give in a class of 60. No schools functions at that pace these days, except government schools. Private schools have come down to 40. Some schools offer 32, one teacher for 32, one for 28. Some schools I know offer one teacher is to 1:8 also, 1:12. So the more less it is, the better it is. But at the same time, let it not be less than 10 or 12, because you need some good amount of students in the class to network and also to socialize. So that point you can definitely consider. The second point is about sports infrastructure. These days many schools don't have grounds, and even if there are grounds, it is usually meant for sports days, right? Good old days, people used to have good amount of physical activities and play areas, not only at the school but also at the house. But courtesy with the ever growing economy and ever growing flat system or the community living system, people socializing has come down, especially the going out and playing has really come down. That means you got to identify a school that has good sports infrastructure. I mean, having a ground is not a good sports infrastructure. They got to have a dedicated sports teachers or dedicated sports faculty, or PD master we used to call it those days. There has to be dedicated people who has to guide the children with equipments, and well oiled and maintained equipments. It's very important, so that your child not only focuses on academics but also on sports. Now same logic applies for arts and culture also. There should not be a case where a school prepares the child only for annual day. That shouldn't be a case. There should be constant involvement in terms of grooming one art or one culture at least, for every child. And if a school does that, then it's definitely a balanced school. So in addition to academics, if a school possesses such infrastructure, sports infrastructure, and say, cultural infrastructure, then they are considered to be a balanced school. Now, the next point that definitely as a parent you need to look at it, the safety parameters, especially if you are a parent who are looking at transportation, from your house to school, the transport buses as small factors as first aid box inside the school bus. These are very, very important. Whether they provide office assistant, or say not office assistant but aid, or someone to take care of children to deboard and board the buses in addition to the driver, is something which you have to see. So the safety factors is very important. We cannot afford to have another Kumbakonam incident in any future, right? So that is an aspect that you have to look at it in terms of choosing the balanced school. And then the next most important factor is about the quality of teachers. Now, it's also important, it's very, very important that a school is meant for academics, as I always say, and it definitely meant for academics, more for academics. That means your teachers, the educators of the school should be of highest quality, right? Now, does the school, when you look at choosing the balanced school for a child, you have to look at points like, does the school have a teacher training calendar? Lot many schools will have this teacher training calendar. When there is a teacher training calendar, it means that the educators are equipped with lot of inputs, both internally and from externally. Do they get trained regularly from external agencies? For example, IB as a board emphasize a lot on faculty training during the course. They in fact take them to some other country also, Geneva at times. Some schools take their faculty to Finland to bring that system, ecosystem and education ecosystem, and make them more relevant to today's context and things like this. So does that school that you are going to choose focuses on academic training? Does the teacher in your school is a consistent teacher, which means they've been there in the system for quite some time, or they shift jobs, they leave teaching, they leave the school in 2-3 years. So these are some of the factors that you can definitely look at before you take that all important decision of choosing the balanced school. Now, the next most important aspect, according to me, once you look at the sports infrastructure, the teachers, you also need to have first-hand experience. What is first-hand experience? Speak to few parents. It's very important that you speak to parents. Last week we saw, I stressed a lot on speaking to the principal, to get to know about the philosophy of the school. Now, whether that's incorporated properly is something which you will know only when you speak to the parents of the students who are already studying in the school. Now, let it be an informal chat. It need not be a formal occasion. It can be an informal chat. Some people could live in your society, in your community. You can talk to them. Find about the views of the school. Find out what do they have to say. Not many will say, some will say positive, some will say negative about the school. Now, as I told you last week, a school cannot satisfy each and every parent today. That's not going to happen. So you got to take the positives for sure. And when someone speaks about something negative about the school, what you got to do is you got to make sure that school has a proper feedback mechanism, right? If the school is willing to accept that it's a mistake and do a course correction on that mistake, then it's definitely a progressive school, I would say. Now, as a parent, you need to know that they have that feedback mechanism in order, right? So these are some of the aspects or points that you have to look at it, right from the philosophy of the school, then the board that matters, the board of enrollment, and then the faculty training, faculty teaching, etc., teachers training, etc., and then the infrastructure part, individual infrastructure, academic infrastructure, sports infrastructure, cultural infrastructure, and definitely you also need to speak to them in person, the first-hand experience of things. Now, let us understand that education is the most important and empowering aspect of every child. There is no doubt. But at the same time, not at the cost of the child. Education cannot be at the cost of the child itself, right? Now, in ancient times, we all know that the guru used to choose the wards. Guru used to teach the student, used to choose the students. Times have reversed now. It's the students who are actually choosing the teachers, not only at kindergarten level, but also at higher education level, right? You have a lot of universities where you can choose faculty, right? The times have changed drastically now. Therefore, choose the right, if not the right school, choose the balanced school that suits your child, that suits your philosophy, your attitude, and your purse. Also, it's very important that you also need to look into the economy of school, because this is going to be the education is not going to be 1 year investment. It's going to be at least 20 years investment, right, from kindergarten to post graduation. So you also need to look at that aspect before you actually choose the balanced school. Now hope this video made a lot of sense, and last week's video and this week video, and in case I have missed out on any, do write to me, do ping me, do WhatsApp me with all your comments, and in case you have any doubts, you can always ping me or call me at the number. My contact details are beneath this video. We'll be happy to assist you and help you find the balanced school for your children. So all the best to all the parents for all the future endeavors of your child. And until next week with altogether different video, see you all. Take care. Have a safe week. Thank you.